Welcome back. In this video, I am going to show you how to do transactions. So basically, what we are going to do in this video is a transaction. We said that our application is for account opening, balance query, withdrawal, and deposit. So far, we are completely done with the account. Now I want us to go to transactions. So in this case, let us go to transactions repository. Pay attention to this video because I will teach some advanced knowledge of Spring Boot and Java. So things will get a little bit more advanced, but in a simpler manner. So in this case, for us to handle the transactions, I have a class called transactions that keep tracks of all the transactions that a customer does. So it has transaction ID, account number, transaction type, amount, transaction date. So in this case, let me go to my repository, create a new repository. So this one I will call it transactions repository. This will be an interface, and this interface will extend JPA repository. So inside here I will pass my class, which is transactions, and the primary key type is an integer. As you can see in my transactions, the primary key type, this is the primary key type, which is an integer. This is my primary key, which is an integer. So I will have to annotate it with at repository. So we said one advantage of annotating a class with at repository is because all the custom SQL exemption will be translated to Java exception. So the very first thing that I will do is I will go to my service and create one new service called transaction service. So this will be annotated with at service annotation. So this denotes that this class contains our business logic. So I will create two methods. The first one is public transaction. So first of all, I will begin by injecting our account repository. So this one I will use private final accounts repository. I will also inject a transactions repository, private final transactions repository, So let me add them to the constructor and now create my first method. So let me expand this and this. So here I will say public transaction transact, and inside here I will pass transactions as a payload. So the very first thing that we are going to do is we are going to do several things before we do our transaction. We are going to check several things. One, we are going to check if account exists. We check if account exists. Two, if account exists, transact, So, but before we do a transaction, in case of withdrawal, we check if there is sufficient funds. Then we do transact. Okay? Yes. So what does transaction involve? Transaction involves this involves saving transaction in transactions table. So with this record, you can be able to know all the transactions that has happened. All the transactions that are happened. 2. Updating the balance on the accounts table. So that is all what will be or what this video will involve. But before that, after checking if account exists, we will also do one more check to check transaction type, to see transaction type, e.g. withdraw, deposit, and so on. So those are the two transactions that I want to track, most especially these two transactions, because these two transactions modifies our data. They modify our data. So let me go step by step. So I will say optional account, so I will call it existing account, is equals to accounts repository dot find by account number. So I will say transactions dot find transactions dot get by account number. So it will first check if existing account dot is present. So I want to check if account does not exist. So I will say not existing account dot is present. So this means that we don't have the provided account. So basically, what do we do? What we do here is withdraw new custom exemption. Inside here we pass new API response, and this API response take the error code, so 404. Then we say account number not found, but then for customer message we can say error occurred when doing transaction. Please confirm account number and try again. Now then check transaction type, e.g. withdraw. Let me go to the second step. If transactions dot transaction type, if transaction dot get transaction type dot equals ignore case withdraw, so we do the logic for withdraw. we do the logic for withdrawal. So first of all, what do we do as the logic for withdrawal? First of all, we save that transaction in the database. So before this check, let us set transactions. Let us set the transaction date. Transaction dot set transaction date. So local date time dot now. Want to set this transaction. So if transaction dot equal withdrawal, basically what we do, we save that transactions. So we say transactions repository dot save. First of all, I will save that transaction. Then after saving, the next one will be to update the balance. Update the balance. Okay. Then let me finish up with this. How do we update the balance? How we update the balance? Here is where some custom queries take into consideration. Let us go inside the account repository and write some custom queries. Account repository and write some custom query. So, so in this case, I am going to write a query at query, not at qualifier, at query. So what is the meaning of this annotation? The annotation at query is very useful. In this case, it tells us that we are writing some SQL query or custom JPQL query. So in this case, I will say, so basically, I want to go to this accounts table and update the balance where account number is provided. So in this case, I will say update account. This table is called account. Set balance is equals to, we are setting it to balance minus amount. We are setting balance to balance minus amount. If the balance was 50 shillings and we are doing a transaction of 10,000, so it will be, so let us use some realistic figures. If the balance is 15,000 and you are doing a transaction worth 10,000, so the balance will be 15,000 minus 10,000, which is 5,000. So where account underscore number is equals to, I want to pass a variable account number. So this is the convention. This is the convention for writing custom query. So it is just a normal SQL query. But for, as you can see, this is a normal SQL query. As you can see, to ensure that this query gets translated as SQL query, not as JPQL query, I will use at native query. Native query is equals to true. So this will be treated as SQL query. Now, what will I do after this? I will create a method. And this method I will say this will be integer update balance. We are updating balance based on int account number double we pass the transaction amount. So this amount is the amount that will be involved in transaction. So we have written a custom query. But one more thing, if we try to execute this SQL query, it will not work. Reason being, we have not, there are some missing annotation which are very, 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 very important. There is an annotation called @modifine. So what does this annotation do? What does this annotation @modifine do? So this is used with @query when the query modifies data. So if this query is modifying the data, we have to use @modifine. What are some of the queries that modifies the data? We have insert, we have delete, and we have update. So the JPA will expect a modifying query. So the other annotation is @transaction. This @transactional annotation, for some reason, if this query fails, the JPA, or if for some reason this query fails, some rollback will happen. The database will do some rollback. Now I want to go to @transaction service and call update balance. So I will say account repository dot update balance. So account repository dot update balance. The first thing I am passing is transactions dot get account number, then transactions dot get amount. So it will update the account balance account for a given account. So that is it for this that is it for this code for withdraw. I want us to test it. So what we do here is now we return the transaction. Return transactions. So one more thing, I want to ask you a question. This is the question that I want to ask you. Remember, our query is doing two things. It is updating two tables. We have accounts and we also have transactions. So these are the two tables that are being updated. So my question is, and I will throw this question to you. You think about it. So what will happen if in the process, a person want to do some transaction, and the transaction that the person is doing is deposit. The person want to deposit 50,000 Kenyan shillings. So this account number has deposited 50,000 Kenyan shillings today, maybe 11/14/2024, and the transaction has happened and it has been recorded in the transaction table successfully. But immediately it begins updating the balance. If the balance was 100,000, it will minus the 50,000 to get the balance of 50,000. So at the point when it is updating the account balance, the code fails. So that means that there exists a record in the transactions, but the balance is not updated. How do we handle such scenario? Because how the program is supposed to work is that if the updation of balance fail, then even this transaction will fail, should fail. This transaction should fail. I should not go into my accounts table, finds that the balance remain intact. I should not go into a transaction table, finds that a transaction has happened, but my balance has not been updated. So that is a very bad scenario. How do we handle that scenario? So for us to handle that, we use an annotation called at transactional. At transactional. So what will this annotation do? This is how this annotation will work. Whenever a transaction has been created but updating of balance has failed, it will roll back the creation of a transaction. So this is an SQL ACID property. There is that property that push for consistency. If one transaction fails, if you are updating more than one table and one transaction fails, then it should do a rollback so that those records are consistent. So that is how you handle that scenario. So I will go to my transactions controller. So inside my controller, I will say new Java class. I will call this transaction controller. So I will say this is at REST controller at request mapping. So I will put /API/v1. Then I will do some post mapping at post mapping. So slash transactions. So I will define a method public transactions transact. So I will pass the at request body. Request body will be transactions. But then here I want to inject the the transaction service. So private final transactions service. Let me inject this the constructor parameter. So I will return transactions service dot transact. So I will pass the transactions as my body, Control Alt L. So then I will go into my Postman collection and create another. So I will duplicate this post for creating account. Duplicate. Then inside here we will say transact. Yeah, API v1 transactions. Yeah, transactions. So the body, I need account number. Transaction, I will need account number. Transaction type. So I will say transaction type. So withdraw, or I will also need amount. So amount. Let me beautify this. Where is the problem? The problem is here. So we have handled method for transact, and for now it only supports one transaction, that is withdraw update balance. Now Let me try to withdraw 15,000 for this account number. So if we go to get a single customer 103, this customer has got a balance of 1500. So what will happen if I try to withdraw more money? What will happen if I try to withdraw more money? What will happen? Like 15,000, what will happen? Internal server error, cannot in string.ignore because return type of transaction.get transaction type. Get transaction type. Okay, that one should be. So transaction ID 1 withdraw 15,000. So let me see what has happened in the database. Let me see what has happened. Account, get all customers, get a single customer. You can see it has withdrawn and the balance now is negative. Oh, we forgot one more thing. We were supposed to check for insufficient balance. How do we handle that? To handle that, this is transaction. We need to this. These are the things that you will be doing in a real life scenario. So check if there is sufficient fund. Okay. Before you even do this transaction, check if there is sufficient fund. If this one existing account, if existing account dot get dot get balance is less than transactions dot get amount. No, get amount. We want to ensure that you cannot do a transaction when you have insufficient balance. Maybe I will write some custom error code, just a custom error code like 411, and then say insufficient funds. Then I will tell a customer you have insufficient funds to do this transaction. Please top up and try again. So this video is becoming long, and I don't want to write a very big video, so I want us to go, before we test that, I want us to go back to accounts repository and write a code for withdrawal. So this one will be update balance. So update deposit balance. When we are deposit, instead of subtracting, we add. Okay, so and for the transaction service, I will copy this code. Till here. Then I will paste it here. If the account type dot equals deposit. So for deposit, you don't need to check whether you have sufficient amount of money. Just transact and update deposit balance. Update deposit balance. just like that. So, and that is all for this code. It was a bit bigger video, but at the end of it all, we have completed the video, and I have taught you some very important concept like writing custom queries, using a transaction to roll back, and also using modifying to show that the query that you are writing will modify the data in the DB. So I now want to go and start testing. I want to go and start testing. I want to go and start testing in my Postman. So if I go back to my Postman, this time around, I want to withdraw. So sorry, I want to transact. The transaction type is withdraw. I want to withdraw 15,000. So if I try to withdraw 15,000, it should fail. Should tell me insufficient fund. You have insufficient fund to do this transaction. Please top up and try again. Let me try depositing. Deposit 25,000. So I have deposited 25,000. So my account should have 25,000 plus negative 13. At least I have some money, I can do a transaction. So you see, have 11,500. So let me go back and transact. This transaction will be withdraw. Withdraw. I want to withdraw money. I want to withdraw 25,000. It should fail. Don't have enough money. So withdraw, 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 withdraw. Have I been able to withdraw? Serious? No, have not been able to withdraw. I think there is typo in withdraw. It should not be withdraw. Should be withdraw. I will show you how to handle payroll validation. Withdraw. So you have insufficient fund. So that means I can withdraw like 5,000. So the withdrawal was successful. So thank you so much for tuning in. It is taking a lot of effort for me to create this kind of video. So if you have not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, like the video, and share. Bye.